The book of Revelation, it has some of the most famous and frankly most debated passages in the entire New Testament. And right near the beginning, you get the letters to the seven churches. Most of us read them as seven separate report cards from God. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if this isn't a bunch of individual reviews, but one single cohesive message, a powerful critique with a theme that is shockingly relevant today? Let's dig into that.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to unpack the context of how this letter was actually meant to be read. Then, we'll decode this fascinating literary formula that the author uses to build his argument. After that, we'll look at a really stark contrast between poverty and praise that reveals the core danger he's warning about, what he calls lukewarm wealth. And finally, we'll connect this ancient warning to a dilemma that, well, we're still wrestling with today.
So right off the bat, we have to correct a huge misunderstanding. These were not seven private, separate letters sent to seven different communities. The source material makes a compelling case that this was actually a circular letter, one single document that was passed from town to town to be read by everyone.
Now, just think about what that means for a second. This wasn't private feedback. The church in Ephesus, they heard the scathing review meant for Laodicea. And the church in Smyrna, they got to hear the glowing praise for Philadelphia. This format creates this incredible sense of shared accountability. It's not just about you, it's about the whole community. It's like everyone was getting to see everyone else's report card.
Okay, and this next piece of context is absolutely crucial. Our source points out that this isn't a text written by Christians against Jews. Those categories, as we know them today, just didn't really exist yet. The author, John, is Jewish. He's writing to what he calls messianic communities, basically other Jews who believed Jesus was the Messiah. His harshest words are actually aimed at other Jewish groups who didn't share that belief. So what we're really reading is this intense internal debate happening inside of first-century Judaism.
So with that background in mind, a really interesting literary pattern starts to jump out. For 5 of the 7 communities, the author uses this very specific, repeated formula to structure his message, especially his criticisms.
And this 4-step pattern is incredibly consistent. First, he starts with some praise, an affirmation. I know what you've been doing. Then comes the pivot, that really powerful word, but. This is where he introduces the core problem, and he gets very specific. And finally, he gives a stern call to action. You need to repent, or you will face consequences, which is often symbolized as having your menorah, your lampstand, taken away, basically losing your spiritual light.
The message to Ephesus is a perfect example of this formula in action. They get all this praise for their hard work, for their doctrinal purity. They're checking a lot of the right boxes. But then the hammer drops. You've lost the love you had at first. You've lost that core passion. It's a brilliant rhetorical move, right? Disarm them with praise right before you deliver the knockout punch. But here's the thing. The real key to understanding the whole message isn't in the 5 churches that get criticized. It's in the 2 that don't. The communities in Smyrna and Philadelphia, they completely break the pattern. They get absolutely 0 criticism, none. And when you put them side by side, the difference is just stark. The 5 churches that get criticized are all kind of understood to be materially comfortable, maybe even wealthy. But they're called out for their spiritual problems. On the flip side, the 2 churches that get nothing but praise, Smyrna and Philadelphia, are explicitly described as being poor and suffering. This contrast isn't a coincidence. It's the entire point.
This single line, written to the people in Smyrna, is basically the thesis statement for this whole section of Revelation. John is completely flipping the definition of wealth on its head. He's looking at a group that is materially poor, that is suffering, and he's telling them, actually, you're the rich ones. This sets the stage for his ultimate critique, which is all about the danger of the opposite. And that brings us to the core argument, which gets its loudest and clearest expression in the message to the very last church on the list, Laodicea. This isn't just one more letter in the sequence. This is the grand finale of his whole argument. The source material argues that the root problem, the thing that connects all 5 of the rebuked communities, is the seductive trap of materialism. It's the danger of letting worldly status, of accumulating stuff, distract you from what John says is spiritually important, focusing on people, on selfless action, on your actual integrity.
And here we have it, probably the most famous insult in the whole book. For the locals, this metaphor was devastating. You see, Laodicea's water supply came from a long aqueduct, so it arrived tepid and disgusting. It wasn't cold and refreshing like the water in nearby Colossae, and it wasn't hot and healing like the springs of Hierapolis. It was just lukewarm, useless. And John links that spiritual state directly to their wealth. Their big boast is, I am rich, I don't need a thing. It's that smug self-sufficiency that has made them spiritually nauseating.
Now, this kind of critique wasn't just coming out of nowhere. The source connects this theme to a much broader and older tradition in Jewish thought, pointing to the Book of Enoch. And look at this, it warns against the exact same problem. The idea that money can give you this fake appearance of righteousness. It can make you look blessed, like you've got it all together, while on the inside, your heart is actually corrupt.
So this all leads us to the final and I think most crucial point. This is not just some abstract, ancient theological debate. The source argues that this core conflict that John lays out, this tension between material wealth and the well-being of the community, is a dilemma that is incredibly and at times painfully relevant today. Our source draws a direct line from this ancient text to the really difficult choices we all face during the global pandemic. Think about it, the debate over opening the economy versus protecting human life, the tension between our individual rights and our communal responsibility. It frames all of this as a modern version of the exact same conflict. It forces a society to ask that fundamental question, what do we actually value more, our stuff or our people? And that really forces us to step back and ask how a critique of wealth, written almost 2,000 years ago to a handful of communities in what is now Turkey, can so directly challenge our modern ideas of success and well-being. Are we, as individuals or as a society, in danger of becoming like Laodicea, boasting that we are rich, we have everything we need, all while being blind to our own deeper spiritual poverty?
And so, this explainer leaves us with this final, really provocative thought from Revelation's report card. The text itself delivers a very clear, if very challenging verdict. It argues that true wealth, the kind of wealth that actually gets praised, isn't found in accumulating more and more for our own personal comfort. It's found in the selfless acts of care for the community, in prioritizing the well-being of others, especially when they're suffering.